Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're gonna, we're gonna get a little personal.
Ooh, exciting. Lay it on me. What are we diving into?
We're tackling how to bring that spark back in a long-term relationship. You know, how to rekindle that fire.
Keeping the romance alive.
Yeah.
I like it. So what's on the menu for today's deep dive?
Well, we're gonna be dissecting this amazing interview with Susan. You know, she's an expert in, well, let's just say passionate lovemaking techniques.
Okay, I'm intrigued already. I'm sensing this is going to be a juicy one.
Oh, it definitely is. She does not hold back.
So what makes Susan such a standout voice in this, let's call it the intimacy game?
I think it's that she's really walked the walk herself.
Right, so her advice isn't just theoretical. It's coming from real-life experience.
Exactly. Her insights come from her own experiences and the journey she's helped others navigate.
Got it. So she's been there, done that, and now she's here to share the wisdom.
Yeah. And she starts by talking about something I think a lot of us can relate to, especially those who've, been through the whole parenting thing. It's that feeling of drifting apart from your partner.
Oh, yeah. Like you're living separate lives under the same roof.
Exactly. Like your ships passing in the night. That's actually a powerful analogy Susan uses.
Ships passing in the night, huh? I can see how that really captures the feeling. You're both so busy, life gets in the way, and suddenly you realize those deep conversations, the shared moments, they've just kind of faded away.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, right? You're focused on work, the kids, keeping the household running, and you forget to nurture that connection with your partner.
Yeah, it's like you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're living parallel lives instead of intertwined ones.
But here's the thing. Susan says this is actually super common. It's not like a sign your relationship is doomed. It's just a phase a lot of couples go through.
That is reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to freak out when you feel that distance. But it sounds like it's not about pointing fingers or placing blame. It's about recognizing a pattern and then figuring out how to shift it.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Susan suggests that past experiences, even things we might consider minor, can actually impact our sex lives in ways we don't realize.
Interesting. You mean like baggage we're carrying around without even knowing it?
Yeah, exactly. She's actually incredibly brave to share her own story of overcoming sexual trauma and how that experience really ignited her passion for helping others.
Wow, that's powerful. So she's turning her pain into purpose.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is how she connects this to the bigger picture, talking about what she calls sexual injustices that so many people face.
Sexual injustices. What are some examples of that?
She talks about things like the lack of proper sex education.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the shame and secrecy that often surround sexuality,
Yeah, that whole taboo thing can really mess with people's heads.
And even just not understanding how our own bodies work. All these experiences can create, a lot of anxiety and fear around intimacy. It makes it hard to fully relax and enjoy pleasure.
It's like you're carrying all this weight around, and it's blocking you from really connecting with yourself and your partner.
Yeah, it's like there's a wall up.
So what's the antidote to all this? How do we break down those walls?
Well, Susan is a huge advocate for open and honest communication.
The classic relationship advice. But I get it. You can't fix something if you don't talk about it.
Right. But she takes it a step further. It's not just about talking about, what you like in bed. It's about creating a safe space to express your needs, your fears, your fantasies, even without judgment.
So it's about really letting your guard down and being vulnerable with each other.
Yeah. And she even has this idea of a sexual soulmate pact.
A sexual soulmate pact. Now that sounds interesting. Tell me more about that.
It's pretty brilliant because it shifts the focus from blame to collaboration.
Okay, so it's not about who's doing it wrong.
Right. It's about creating that safe space where you can both explore what truly turns you on. You're committing to be receptive to each other's needs and desires, even if they're different from your own.
That's a big one. Being open to things you might not have even considered before.
Exactly. So that's a big takeaway. Communication. But what does that actually look like, in practice? Does it require, some grand romantic gesture to rekindle the flame?
Oh, I'm all for grand gestures. But maybe not everyone has the time or budget for that.
Well, actually, Susan believes that small, consistent acts of care and connection can be incredibly powerful. She calls them small offers.
Small offers. Okay, give me an example. I'm a visual learner,
So picture this. A husband's preparing the bedroom for a relaxing experience. He dims the lights, lights some candles, maybe puts on some music.
Okay, setting the mood. I can see that.
Right. But it's not about pressure for sex. It's about creating a space for intimacy to unfold naturally. It's those little things that show your partner, hey, I'm thinking of you, I care.
I love that. It's so much more doable than trying to plan some big elaborate date night all the time.
And these small gestures are powerful because they directly counter that ships passing in the night feeling. You're actively choosing to reconnect, even amidst, the chaos of life.
Exactly. It's about those everyday moments that add up over time and rebuild that sense of connection. Small but mighty.
Now let's get a little more specific. Susan talks a lot about the female arousal system and busts a lot of myths about how women experience pleasure.
Ooh. Yeah, I think a lot of folks, myself included, could use some myth busting in that department.
She really emphasizes the importance of time and relaxation and focusing on more than just intercourse.
So it's not just about, the main event.
Exactly. And she makes a really important point about the difference between male and female arousal. Men, they're driven by testosterone so they can get aroused pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. Men are ready to go in like 2 seconds flat.
But women often need more time, more of a sense of safety and connection to really relax and get into it.
Yeah, foreplay isn't just a suggestion. It's essential.
Absolutely. Extended foreplay is key. But let's not forget about the emotional element, too. A woman needs to feel safe and desired, not just, physically stimulated.
It's about creating a whole experience, right? Not just a physical act.
Think of it as a gradual buildup of anticipation and pleasure where she can fully connect with her body and her desires.
Okay, creating a sensual journey. I like that.
Susan also talks about this intriguing concept of yoni massage.
Yoni massage. I've heard whispers about this.
Yeah.
Enlighten me.
Well, so yoni is a Sanskrit word for the vulva and vagina. And yoni massage is a really beautiful and sensual way to explore female pleasure. It's about slow, mindful touch, using your hands and fingers to stimulate, different areas.
So it's not just about foreplay leading up to intercourse. It's a standalone practice.
Right. Susan actually suggests doing yoni massage on a separate day from intercourse.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
So by separating it from the pressure of penetration, you create a new pathway to pleasure.
Makes sense. It takes the focus off the goal and lets her really enjoy the sensations.
It can be incredibly empowering for women, allowing her to explore her body and sensations in a more relaxed and mindful way.
Wow, okay. Starting to see how this all ties together. Communication, small gestures, understanding the female body. It's all about creating a more connected and fulfilling experience.
And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, what about those of us who are, curious about incorporating toys and exploring new techniques? Is Susan on board with that?
I mean, you can't talk about intimacy without at least mentioning toys, right? What's Susan's take on all that?
Susan is all about it. She has this wonderfully enthusiastic approach to sex toys.
So no shame in the game.
None whatsoever. She views them as tools for pleasure rather than, something to be ashamed of.
I like her style.
And she's got this fun idea of creating a sex life bucket list.
A bucket list for sex. I love it. Tell me more about this.
So it's a playful way to brainstorm fantasies and desires, things you might want to try, roles you might want to play, sensations you want to explore.
So like a shared list for couples to spice things up.
Exactly. It encourages couples to step outside of their comfort zones and keep things exciting.
Okay, that's awesome. But I can imagine some guys might be feeling a little apprehensive at this point. What about concerns like, premature ejaculation or not knowing how to please their partner?
That's totally understandable. It's vulnerable territory.
It's definitely a sensitive topic, but an important one to address. What does Susan have to say about those concerns?
Well, it's so important to acknowledge those concerns. A lot of men struggle with these issues, and it can be really tough to talk about. But Susan addresses them directly. She emphasizes that they're common, and they can be addressed with the right techniques.
So there's hope. It's not a life sentence of awkwardness.
Exactly. She even mentions a technique called me breath for ejaculatory control.
Me breath. I'm all ears. Tell me everything.
It's all about becoming aware of those subtle sensations before climax. You're learning to control specific muscles and using your breath to kind of ride that wave of pleasure without, going over the edge.
So it's like a mindfulness practice for your,
Yeah. And it takes practice, but it can be a game changer for men who want to last longer.
Okay. I'm adding me breath to my to-learn list. Anything else we should add?
Well, I think the big takeaway here is that it's about shifting from a performance-based mindset to a more present and connected experience.
I love that. It's not about the destination. It's about enjoying the journey.
Right. Instead of focusing on the goal of orgasm, you're learning to savor the journey.
That's a much healthier way to approach it.
Okay, so we've talked about communication, small gestures, understanding the female arousal system, and even some, adventurous exploration. But how do you keep that spark alive over time? Relationships, they ebb and flow, so what's the secret to maintaining desire in the long run?
That's the golden question, isn't it? How do we keep things hot and heavy after the honeymoon phase fades?
Well, Susan has this simple yet profound equation. Safety plus variety equals desire.
Ooh, I like that. Break that down for me. How does safety play into desire?
It all comes back to that foundation of trust and security. When you feel safe and loved, you're more open to trying new things, to stepping outside your comfort zone.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to want to get adventurous if you're feeling insecure or judged.
And that's where variety comes in, those erotic play dates Susan encourages, those moments of breaking out of routine and injecting, a dose of excitement and novelty.
So it's like a constant exploration, a journey of discovery that evolves with you and your partner over time.
I love that. It really is a journey, and I think it's something we can apply to other areas of our lives as well, branching out, trying new things.
Oh, totally. Speaking of exploring and trying new things, let's talk about a challenge that a lot of couples face, the dreaded dry spell.
Yeah, the dry spell, I've heard of those.
You know that point where intimacy just kind of fizzles out, especially after years of being together. We actually heard from a listener named Ethan who described his situation as feeling mechanical, like they're just going through the motions.
Oh, that's sad. It's heartbreaking to hear that, but it's, so common. And Susan's ships passing in the night analogy definitely applies here too. Life gets busy, routines take over, and that spark just fades into the background.
Yeah, Ethan even used the phrase down the barrel of a dry bedroom, which I think perfectly captures that feeling of dread and monotony. Oh yeah, down the barrel of a dry bedroom. It does paint a bleak picture. It sounds like Ethan and his partner have fallen into a routine and they've lost that spontaneity and passion that was there in the beginning.
So what's the solution? Is there any hope for Ethan and his partner?
There's always hope. The good news is there are ways to rekindle that spark.
Okay, so what does Susan suggest? How do you get out of that rut?
Well, she talks about creating erotic playdates.
Erotic playdates. Okay, tell me more about that.
It's all about scheduling dedicated time for intimacy, but without the pressure of intercourse.
So taking the focus off, the goal and just enjoying the journey.
Exactly. It's about exploring different forms of touch connection and sensual play.
So, what kinds of things are we talking about here?
It could be anything from giving each other massages to taking a bath together to, just cuddling and kissing.
It sounds like a great way to kind of break out of that routine and rediscover each other's bodies and desires. It sounds like something Ethan and his partner might benefit from, especially since he mentioned that they're pretty much stuck in a rut when it comes to positions.
Yeah, always the same 1 or 2 positions, always in the bedroom, always at night.
So how do you break out of that?
They definitely need to shake things up. Susan encourages couples to, get creative, try different angles, different surfaces, even different rooms in the house.
So it's about getting out of the bedroom and exploring new terrain, both literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes just changing the scenery or trying a new position can make a huge difference.
But what about the fear of suggesting something new or expressing a fantasy? I can imagine some people might feel awkward or even rejected if they put themselves out there.
Yeah, it's totally understandable. It's a vulnerable thing to share your deepest desires, for sure.
So how do you approach that conversation without, freaking your partner out?
Susan's advice is to approach these conversations with honesty and respect and create a safe space where both partners feel comfortable sharing.
So it's not about springing your wildest fantasy on your partner out of the blue.
Right. It's about creating an open dialogue where you can explore together.
And what if your partner, isn't into it? How do you deal with rejection?
Well, rejection doesn't have to be a deal breaker. It's an opportunity for growth and understanding. It's all about how you handle it, talking it through and respecting each other's boundaries.
Now, speaking of exploring and understanding, let's talk about something that a lot of men struggle with, understanding female arousal. It seems like, a lot of guys feel lost and confused, unsure of what to do or how to please their partners.
Yeah, the female arousal system can be a bit of a mystery, right?
And Susan does an amazing job of breaking it all down in a way that's clear and easy to understand.
So she demystifies the whole thing. I'm all for that.
She emphasizes that women's bodies respond to stimulation differently than men's. It's not just about hitting the right spots, but about creating a gradual buildup of sensation and connection.
And she really stresses the importance of extended foreplay, focusing on more than just the genitals.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
what does that look like in practice?
Well, she talks about the importance of touch, kissing, and creating a sensual experience that engages all the senses.
I think a lot of men rush through foreplay because they're so focused on getting to, intercourse.
Yeah, they're missing out on a whole lot of pleasure.
But what you're saying is it's about slowing down, paying attention to her responses, and creating a space of safety and intimacy where she can fully relax and surrender to pleasure.
Precisely. And that can be a really beautiful and powerful experience for both partners.
We actually heard from a listener, Kit, who mentioned feeling awkward about certain techniques, especially when it comes to breast play.
Oh, breast play. That can definitely be a tricky area to navigate. Yeah.
He asked, what are you supposed to do with nipples? Do you suck on them? Tweak them?
It's a question that so many men have. And it shows that he, wants to learn and please his partner.
What would Susan say to that? What's the right way to approach breast play?
She encourages a playful and experimental approach, emphasizing that there's no right or wrong way to stimulate the breasts.
So it's about paying attention to your partner's cues and responding to what feels good for them.
Exactly. And communication is key here, too.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage your partner to tell you what she likes, what she doesn't like, and what feels best.
Now, Susan also talked about something that was totally new to me, orgasmic variety. She mentioned that women can experience over 20 different types of orgasms.
Wait, 20 different types? That's mind-blowing.
I know, right? It challenges that common belief that orgasm is this singular, predictable event.
So it's not just about clitoral or vaginal orgasms.
Right. Susan describes a whole spectrum of experiences, including blended orgasms and even full-body orgasms.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. I think this is something that a lot of men, and maybe even some women, are completely unaware of.
And it's definitely something worth exploring. Susan encourages women to, experiment, explore their own bodies, and communicate with their partners.
It's about expanding our understanding of pleasure and recognizing that it can be a much more nuanced and multifaceted experience than we might realize.
Speaking of expanding our understanding, I think it's important to touch upon the emotional and mental aspects of sex, which Susan refers to as the heart-centered approach to lovemaking.
Okay, the heart-centered approach. I like the sound of that. What does that actually look like in practice?
It's about connecting on a deeper level, cultivating intimacy and creating, a space of love and acceptance. It's not just about the physical act of sex. It's about the emotional and spiritual connection between two people.
So it's about being fully present with your partner.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally.
Exactly. And Susan suggests incorporating practices like eye-gazing, tantric breathing exercises, and mindful touch. These practices can help you, tune into your own body and the energy between you and your partner.
It sounds like a really beautiful and powerful way to deepen intimacy.
Now, one question that comes up a lot in the context of long-term relationships is how to maintain desire over time. It's natural for that initial spark to fade as a relationship evolves. So how do you keep that flame alive?
Right. Like, how do we avoid becoming those ships passing in the night?
Well, remember Susan's equation, safety plus variety equals desire.
Oh, yeah. So how does that play out in a long-term relationship?
It comes back to that foundation of trust and security that you've built over time. When you feel safe and loved, you're more open to trying new things, to stepping outside your comfort zone.
That's where variety comes in.
Exactly. It's about those erotic play dates, those moments of breaking out of routine and injecting a dose of excitement.
So it's like a constant exploration, a journey of discovery that evolves with you and your partner over time. I love that.
No, I know we've been throwing a lot of information out there and it can feel overwhelming. So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to offer some practical advice based on, Susan's insights. What's the first step for couples who want to create a more fulfilling and connected, intimate life?
Well, I think the most important thing is to acknowledge where you are and be honest with yourself and your partner about your needs and desires.
So often we try to, ignore those feelings or pretend everything is fine when it's not.
It's much easier to sweep things under the rug, right?
But it's about having the courage to acknowledge the challenges and be willing to, work on them together.
Absolutely. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. There are incredible resources available, including books, workshops, and therapists specializing in sexual health and intimacy.
Don't be afraid to reach out and seek guidance. There's no shame in wanting to, improve your sex life and create a more fulfilling and connected relationship. Now, I want to address a topic that can be particularly sensitive for women, the impact of menopause on sexuality. It's something that Eliza, a listener we heard from earlier, was particularly concerned about. She expressed a lot of anxiety about, her changing body and feeling less desirable.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Menopause is a huge transition, and it can definitely affect how women feel about their bodies and their sexuality.
So is there anything women can do to feel more comfortable with those changes?
Well, first of all, it's so important to acknowledge those feelings and validate her concerns. Menopause is a time of significant hormonal shifts, and those changes can definitely impact desire, arousal, and overall sexual experience.
So those feelings are totally valid.
Absolutely. But as Susan emphasizes, sensuality and desire aren't limited by age. In fact, many women find that their sexuality evolves and deepens as they get older. It's about challenging those, societal pressures and unrealistic beauty standards that tell us we're no longer desirable once we reach a certain age.
So it's about embracing our bodies at every stage of life and recognizing that beauty, comes in many forms.
Exactly. And it's about having a partner who supports and celebrates those changes, who sees the beauty and the radiance that shines from within.
That's so important, feeling loved and accepted for who you are at any age.
Absolutely.
Eliza also mentioned being concerned about vaginal dryness, which is, a common physical change that women experience during menopause. What advice does Susan have for dealing with that?
Well, she recommends using a high-quality lubricant and stresses the importance of finding one that's compatible with your body and preferences.
So do your research and find what works best for you.
Right. And she also suggests exploring different types of touch and stimulation, focusing on areas that might be more sensitive during this time, like, the clitoris or the breasts.
So it's about being open to trying new things and communicating with your partner about what feels good.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that menopause doesn't have to be the end of your sex life. It can be a time of rediscovery and exploration, a chance to connect with your body and your partner in, new and exciting ways.
So it's not the end of an era, it's the beginning of a new chapter.
Exactly. Now, one question that often comes up in the context of menopause is whether libido always declines. Is that true?
That's a good question, because you hear a lot about women losing their sex drive after menopause.
Right, but it's not necessarily true. While hormonal shifts can impact desire, libido is also influenced by factors like stress, health, and relationship dynamics. So it's not a foregone conclusion that your sex drive will, plummet during menopause.
Okay, so there's hope for those of us who, are worried about losing our mojo.
There's always hope. What advice does Susan have for women who are concerned about maintaining their libido during this time?
Yeah, are there things you can do to keep that spark alive?
She encourages women to take a proactive approach to their sexual health. That means maintaining a healthy weight, getting regular exercise, managing stress, and nourishing your body with nutrient-rich foods.
So it's about taking care of yourself holistically.
Exactly. And she also suggests exploring, natural remedies and therapies like herbal supplements or hormone replacement therapy, which can help balance hormones and alleviate some of the symptoms associated with menopause.
So it's about, exploring different options and finding what works best for you.
Exactly. When you feel good in your own skin, it radiates into all aspects of your life, including, your sexual relationships.
We've talked a lot about women's experiences, but I want to circle back to a concern that was raised by a few of our male listeners, the fear of erectile dysfunction. It's a topic that, a lot of men find difficult to talk about, but it's important to address.
Oh, absolutely. ED is incredibly common, and it can be a real blow to a man's self-esteem.
So what causes it? Is it just a natural part of aging?
Well, it can be age-related, but Susan emphasizes that erectile dysfunction is often a symptom of an underlying health issue like heart disease, diabetes, or high blood pressure.
So if you're experiencing ED, the first step is to talk to your doctor.
Exactly. Rule out any medical conditions, and then there are, lots of treatment options available, including medication therapy and lifestyle changes.
So it's not something you have to just live with.
Not at all. And it's important to remember that erectile dysfunction doesn't have to be the end of your sex life. There are ways to, adapt and explore different forms of intimacy and pleasure.
And it's crucial for partners to create a space of understanding and compassion where they can address these concerns openly and honestly.
Absolutely. It's a team effort, right? You're in this together.
Now, before we move on to our final segment, I want to address one last question that came up in the interview. the role of STI testing in the context of non-monogamous relationships. It's a topic that, Susan is very passionate about.
Yeah, that's an important one,
Yeah.
especially with more and more people exploring different relationship styles.
She emphasizes the importance of practicing safe sex and getting regular STI testing, regardless of your relationship status.
So it's not just about being in a monogamous relationship.
Right. It's about taking responsibility for your own health and the health of your partners.
Exactly. And she encourages open communication about sexual history and establishing, clear boundaries and agreements regarding sexual health and safety.
It's about creating a culture of respect and responsibility within your relationships. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and it can feel like a lot to process. So before we wrap up, I want to circle back to Susan's core message, which is about, embracing a lifelong journey of sexual exploration and discovery. What stood out to you?
It's been a whirlwind of information for sure. But her reminder to let go of societal constraints, limiting beliefs, and expectations really resonated with me. It's about creating a sexual landscape that's, authentic and fulfilling for you and your partner.
It's about owning your sexuality, embracing your desires, and celebrating the beauty and power of the human body. And never stop learning, growing, and experiencing, new levels of pleasure.
I love that. Now, before we move on to our final segment, I want to share a closing tradition we have on this show.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
We ask each guest to leave a question for the next guest, not knowing who they might be.
Oh, that's a cool idea. So it's like passing the torch, right? Connecting the conversations.
Exactly. Now, Susan's question for our next guest is this. If you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self something that would have made you happier, healthier, or more successful, what would it be?
That's a powerful question. It really makes you reflect on your own journey and the lessons you've learned along the way. Now, before we wrap up, I'd like to turn the tables and ask you the same question. If you could go back and whisper some advice to your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Let me think. I think I'd tell myself to be more open to new experiences, to embrace vulnerability, and to trust my intuition.
I love that. And what about in the realm of relationships? What advice would you give your younger self about love and intimacy?
That's a good one. I think it emphasized the importance of, communication, both listening and expressing your needs and desires.
Communication is key, right? It's the foundation of any healthy relationship.
Absolutely. And I'd also stress the importance of choosing partners who share your values and who support your growth and evolution, and never settling for anything less than you deserve.
Love should be a source of joy, fulfillment, and mutual respect.
Absolutely. Now, I'm curious, what has shifted for you after this deep dive into Susan's world of passionate lovemaking techniques? What's resonating with you the most?
That's a great question. I think what really struck me was her emphasis on the importance of playfulness and exploration in long-term relationships. It's so easy to get caught up in the routine of daily life and forget to, make time for fun and excitement. But Susan reminds us that intimacy should be joyful and adventurous. It's about rediscovering that spark and keeping things fresh.
I completely agree. And it's not just about, trying new positions or incorporating toys. It's about approaching intimacy with a sense of curiosity and playfulness. It's about being open to new experiences and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with our partners.
It's about creating a space where we can let go of our inhibitions and truly connect with each other on a deep and meaningful level.
Absolutely. And Susan's concept of erotic playdates really resonated with me. It's such a simple yet powerful way to inject some fun and spontaneity back into the relationship. It takes the pressure off and allows couples to, reconnect in a way that feels playful and exciting.
And it's a reminder that intimacy doesn't always have to be about, the big event. It can be about those small moments of connection, those stolen kisses, those lingering touches. It's about savoring the journey and appreciating the beauty of each other's bodies.
It's about creating a culture of intimacy in your relationship where those small moments become just as important as the grand gestures.
Exactly. Now, I'm curious, what are some things you might do differently in your own relationship, inspired by Susan's insights?
Well, I'm definitely going to be more intentional about creating those erotic play dates and incorporating, more novelty and variety into our intimate life.
So shaking things up a bit, breaking out of that routine.
Exactly. And I'm also going to be more mindful of creating a safe and non-judgmental space where we can both feel comfortable sharing, our thoughts and fantasies.
So fostering that sense of trust and vulnerability.
Absolutely. And I'm also going to be more proactive about addressing any, concerns or challenges that arise, rather than letting them fester and create distance.
So facing those challenges head on with compassion and understanding.
And remembering that, intimacy is a journey, not a destination. It's about continuous growth, exploration, and connection.
I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. And one thing that really stood out to me in the interview was Susan's emphasis on sexual biohacking and regenerative therapies.
Oh, yes. That was fascinating. It's like taking a proactive approach to, your sexual health, both physically and mentally.
She encourages listeners to prioritize exercise, sleep, nutrition, and stress management, all of which can impact libido, energy levels, and, overall vitality.
It's about recognizing that our sexual selves are, intricately connected to our overall well-being.
And that by nurturing our bodies and minds, we can, enhance our sexual experiences and enjoy a more fulfilling and vibrant sex life.
Exactly. It's about embracing a holistic approach to sexuality and recognizing that it's an integral part of a, healthy and balanced life.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground today, and it can feel, overwhelming. So what are some key takeaways that our listener can start implementing right now?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that communication is key. Start by having an open and honest conversation with your partner about, your needs, desires, and concerns.
And remember those small offers, simple acts of care and connection can go a long way in, rekindling intimacy.
Exactly. It's not about grand gestures, but rather those small, consistent efforts that demonstrate love and appreciation.
And don't be afraid to, explore and experiment, try new things, incorporate toys, and create a playful and adventurous atmosphere in the bedroom.
And remember, knowledge is power. Educate yourself about your body and your partner's body. Learn about different techniques, explore different types of orgasms, and, don't be afraid to ask questions.
And lastly, prioritize your overall health and well-being. Nourish your body with healthy foods, get enough sleep, manage stress, and engage in activities that bring you joy.
Because when you feel good in your own skin, it, radiates into all aspects of your life, including your sexual relationships.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about Susan's perspective on intimacy and desire, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What's your take on the role of desire in a long-term relationship? How do you keep that spark alive, that sense of, longing and excitement when you've been with someone for years, maybe even decades?
Ooh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's something that, many couples grapple with, and there's no magic formula. But I think it starts with recognizing that desire isn't a static thing. It ebbs and flows, shifts and transforms over time.
So it's not about trying to, recapture that initial intensity, that honeymoon phase feeling.
Exactly. It's about embracing the evolution of desire and recognizing that it might express itself differently at different stages of the relationship.
So how do you navigate those shifts, those inevitable changes in desire that happen over time?
I think it requires a combination of self-awareness, communication, and a willingness to adapt and experiment. Mm-hmm. It's about staying curious about yourself, your partner, and the ever-evolving landscape of your relationship.
And what about those times when, desire seems to have completely vanished? What advice would you give to couples who are struggling to rekindle that spark?
Well, it's important to, address any underlying issues that might contributing to the lack of desire, whether it's stress, health problems, relationship conflicts, or just a lack of time and attention devoted to intimacy. It's about looking beyond the symptoms and getting to the root causes.
So it's like detective work, right? You have to figure out what's really going on.
Exactly. And once those underlying issues are addressed, how do you create space for desire to reemerge?
Yeah, because you can't just will yourself to feel desire.
Right. It might involve, scheduling dedicated time for intimacy, exploring new activities and experiences together, or just prioritizing, physical touch and affection.
It's about being proactive and making a conscious effort to nurture that spark.
Exactly. Desire is often a fragile thing, easily extinguished by stress, resentment, or a lack of attention. It's about creating a fertile ground for it to grow and flourish.
Now, I want to address a topic that can be particularly challenging for couples, navigating differences in libido. What happens when, one partner has a higher sex drive than the other?
Oh, the classic mismatch of libidos. It's a recipe for tension if not handled well.
So how do you, bridge that gap, that discrepancy in desire?
It starts with, open and honest communication.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging those differences and finding ways to compromise and meet each other's needs.
And it's about recognizing that there's, no right or wrong level of desire.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance that works for both partners.
Susan talked about the importance of understanding the female arousal system and recognizing that women often need more time and a different type of stimulation than men.
Right. We touched on that earlier.
Yeah.
It highlights the importance of patience, communication, and a willingness to explore, different techniques and approaches.
It's about recognizing that women's bodies respond to stimulation differently than men's. It's not just about hitting the right spots, but rather about creating a gradual buildup of, sensation and connection.
And she stresses the importance of, extended foreplay, focusing on more than just the genitals.
Exactly. So it's about slowing down, paying attention to her responses, and creating a space of safety and intimacy where she can fully relax and surrender to pleasure.
Exactly. It's about creating an experience that's both physically and emotionally satisfying for both partners.
Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the, physical and emotional aspects of intimacy, but I want to circle back to a topic that Susan brought up earlier, the spiritual dimension of sex.
Oh, yeah. That was really interesting. She talked about that feeling of, transcendence, of connection to something greater than ourselves that can occur during moments of profound intimacy.
And she encourages couples to explore that dimension, to tap into that energy of, love and connection that can flow between two people who are fully present and open to each other.
It's about recognizing that, sex can be a sacred act, a way to connect not only with our partners, but also with our own deepest selves.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and it can feel, like a lot to process. So before we wrap up, I want to circle back to some key takeaways that our listeners can start implementing right now.
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that, intimacy is a journey, not a destination. It's about continuous growth, exploration, and connection.
And it's about creating a space of, love, acceptance, and vulnerability where both partners feel safe to express their needs, desires, and fears.
And it's about remembering that there's, no right or wrong way to experience intimacy, as long as it's consensual, respectful, and pleasurable for both partners.
And it's about recognizing that intimacy isn't just about sex, but also about, the countless ways we connect with each other through touch, conversation, shared experiences, and simply being present.
It's about cultivating a sense of presence, of being fully engaged in the moment with all of our senses and emotions.
And it's about remembering that, intimacy is a gift, a precious and fragile thing that deserves to be nurtured and cherished.
Absolutely. It's a gift that we give to ourselves, to our partners, and to the world.
Yeah.
It truly is. And it brings us back to Ethan, our listener who feels like he and his partner are stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
I think Susan's insights offer some great starting points for them.
Yeah, totally agree. So where should Ethan and his partner, begin? What's the first step to get out of that going through the motions feeling?
Well, it all starts with a conversation, a real honest conversation about what they're both feeling and what they're, longing for. It's about creating that safe space Susan talks about, where they can each express their desires and concerns without judgment.
It's about remembering that intimacy is a, two-way street. It's not about one partner trying to please the other, but rather creating a shared experience that's fulfilling for both.
Right. And I think erotic play dates could be a game changer for them. It's a, low-pressure way to bring back that sense of playfulness and exploration.
It takes the focus off, performance and lets them rediscover that spark of excitement that might have gotten lost in the daily grind.
What I find so interesting is Susan's emphasis on expanding our definition of intimacy. It doesn't always have to be about intercourse.
Absolutely. There are so many ways to experience pleasure and connection. Exploring each other's bodies, sensual massage, even just cuddling and kissing. These can all be incredibly intimate and fulfilling. It's about opening ourselves up to new possibilities and letting go of those rigid ideas about what sex should be. Now, this has been a deep dive into, long-term relationships, but what about those who are just starting out? What advice would you give to someone navigating those early stages of a relationship where everything is new and exciting, but also maybe a little, nerve-wracking?
I think the key is to approach those early encounters with a sense of curiosity and playfulness. Focus on exploring each other's bodies, discovering what feels good, and communicating openly.
Communication is so crucial, especially in the beginning when you're still, learning about each other's needs and boundaries.
Absolutely. Creating that foundation of mutual respect and trust is so important. And remember, intimacy is a gradual process. It's a journey of discovery that unfolds over time.
It's about enjoying the process, not rushing to the finish line. Now, before we say goodbye, let's circle back to Susan's closing question for our next guest. If you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self something that would have made you happier, healthier, or more successful, what would it be?
It's a tough one. But if I could whisper some advice to my younger self, it would be to trust the journey, to embrace the ups and downs, knowing that every experience, even the challenging ones, shapes us and teaches us, valuable lessons. And I'd remind myself to be kind to myself, to celebrate my strengths, and to embrace my imperfections.
I love that self-compassion is so important. And what about in the realm of, love and intimacy? What wisdom would you share with your younger self?
I would say be open to love, take risks, and never settle for anything less than you deserve. I'd also remind myself that intimacy is a precious gift worth fighting for, even when things get tough.
It's about remembering that love isn't always, easy, but it's always worth the effort.
Absolutely. Choose love even when it's scary, even when it's challenging, because it's the most transformative and fulfilling experience we can have in this lifetime.
That's so beautifully said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of intimacy and desire. I hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to create more fulfilling and connected relationships. Remember, intimacy is not a destination, but a lifelong journey of, growth, connection, and pleasure. So embrace the journey, be kind to yourselves, and never stop exploring.
And never forget that you are worthy of love,
Yeah.
pleasure, and a deeply fulfilling and connected life.